His first big musical break came quite by accident. Commercially minded record producer Creed Taylor had put together a set of pop-funk tunes for alto sax player Hank Crawford. On the eve of the recording date, Crawford was arrested on a 2-year-old driving charge, Washington told Rolling Stone. Taylor then called in the little-known Washington as a last-minute replacement and had him play the alto parts. The album, Inner City Blues, was released in 1971 under Washington's name. It became a big hit that sold hundreds of thousands of copies and did much to break down barriers between jazz and pop. As Washington admitted to Rolling Stone, "My big break was blind luck." Rolling Stone magazine called Grover Washington Jr. the most popular sax player working in a jazz fusion idiom. And because of Washington's great success, some critics have downgraded his music, calling it bland, too commercial, and not real jazz. However, Washington is an obviously talented musician who always surrounds himself with other top-notch musicians and who has had the good fortune to string together a long procession of hit albums. As Albert DeGeneva wrote in Downbeat, Grover Washington Jr. has found his niche, and though some are offended by his commercial ventures, no one can deny his musical abilities. He creates mood music, tinged with urban funk, done with taste and quality. Grover Washington Jr. has been considered by many to be the founding father of smooth jazz and a master of the jazz-funk genre, working as a prominent songwriter and talented sax player. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Washington made some of the genre's most memorable hits. These include Mr. Magic, Black Frost, and The Best Is Yet to Come, with Patti LaBelle on guest vocals. He is also remembered for his take on the Dave Brubeck classic Take 5, and for his 1996 version of Soulful Strut. A string of acclaimed records brought Washington through the 1970s, which culminated in the signature piece for everything Washington would do from then on. Wine Light was the album that defined everything Washington was about. The album was smooth, fused with R&B, and had an easy listening feel. Washington's love of basketball, especially the Philadelphia 76ers, led him to dedicate his first track, Let It Flow, to Julius Erving. The highlight of the album, and a main staple of radio airplay everywhere, was his great collaboration with soul artist Bill Withers on Just the Two of Us. It was also the final step away from Motown, landing him on Elektra Records and into a new era of jazz excellence. The album went platinum in 1981 and also won a Grammy Award for Best R&B Song. Wine Light was also nominated for Record of the Year and Song of the Year. Washington was born in Buffalo, New York, on December 12, 1943. He came from a musical family. His father played tenor sax, his mother sang in the choir, one brother was an organist in the church choir, and his youngest brother, Darrell, became a drummer. Like his father, Washington soon took up the sax. He grew up listening to the great jazzmen and big band leaders like Benny Goodman and Fletcher Henderson. At the age of 8, his father gave him a sax. He practiced and would sneak into clubs to see famous Buffalo blues musicians. His younger brother, drummer Darrell Washington, would follow in his footsteps. Washington left Buffalo after high school and played with a Midwest group called the Four Cliffs. Shortly thereafter, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. He was headed for Vietnam until he talked his way into the bass band. Besides playing with the 19th Army Band, he also played in Philadelphia during his free time, working with a variety of organ trios and rock groups, where he met drummer Billy Cobham. A music mainstay in New York City, Cobham introduced Washington to many New York musicians. It was at one of his off-post gigs that Washington met his future wife, Christine, who was then an editorial assistant. Christine told People magazine, "We met on a Saturday, and he moved in on Thursday." They were married in 1967. After leaving the Army, Washington freelanced his talents around New York City, eventually landing in Philadelphia in 1967. In 1970 and 1971, he appeared on Leon Spencer's first 2 albums on Prestige Records. While his first 3 albums established him as a force in jazz and soul music, it was his 4th album in 1974, Mr. Magic, that proved a major commercial success. The album climbed to number 1 on Billboard's R&B album chart and number 10 on Billboard's Top 40 album chart. The title track reached number 16 on the R&B singles chart. All these albums included guitarist Eric Gale as a near-permanent member in Washington's arsenal. His follow-up in 1975, Feels So Good also made #1 on Billboard's R&B album chart and #10 on the pop album chart. Both albums were major parts of the jazz-funk movement of the mid-1970s. Washington developed what is called a jazz pop or jazz rock fusion musical style. It consists of jazz improvisation over a pep or rock beat. Although he came from a jazz background, influenced by such artists as John Coltrane, Joe Henderson, and Oliver Nelson, Washington's wife got him interested in pop music. "I encouraged him to listen to more pop," Christine told Rolling Stone. "His intent was to play jazz, but he started listening to both. And at one point he told me he just wanted to play what he felt, without giving it a label." In the post-Wine Light era, Washington is credited for giving rise to a new batch of talent that would make its mark in the late 1980s and early 1990s. He is known for bringing Kenny G to the forefront, as well as artists such as Walter Beasley, Steve Cole, Nye G, Boney James, and George Howard. His song Mr. Magic is noted as being influential on go-go music starting in the mid-1970s. He continued to record and tour internationally, playing at clubs and festivals worldwide until his death. He played tenor, alto, soprano, and baritone sax. He also played clarinet, electric bass, and piano. On December 17, 1999, 5 days after his 56th birthday, Washington collapsed while waiting in the green room after performing 4 songs for the Saturday Early Show at CBS Studios in New York City. He was taken to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at about 7:30 p.m. His doctors determined that he had suffered a massive heart attack. While Grover Washington was known the world over as a virtuoso musician, composer, producer, and for his great personal warmth, perhaps what separated him from most stars was his ability to remain grounded. He also left behind a remarkable humanitarian legacy as a public servant who was always willing to lend his name and talent to help others. Whether it was performing the national anthem at the Special Olympics, teaching master classes at the Settlement Music School, or playing a benefit concert for the Oklahoma City bombing victims, Grover Washington Jr. was always there making a difference. A larger-than-life mural on the corner of Broad and Diamond Streets pays tribute to the famed musician who for over 3 decades called Philadelphia his home. If you look at it and shut your eyes, you can almost hear the music. This is James from One Track Jazz. Thanks for listening. Click on the One Track Jazz playlist to see other videos and don't forget to like and subscribe.